everyone, it's just me, Chris, your clairvoyant. I am coming to you today with a little bit different setup. If you ever happen to have a reading from me and it's video or live, this is kind of where I am. I'm at my little desk that I use to do readings at when I possibly can. So today, I really wanted to, I've been thinking about this for a couple of days because things are just kind of crazy. They're kind of crazy in the world. There's maybe especially crazy here in the United States where we're going through an election process as well. But especially it's with the fears of the coronavirus, the things that have been happening in the stock market, people's, travel plans, their lives being so disrupted, and fear. That's the big thing. There's just so much fear and uncertainty right now. So I thought I'd go ahead and do a reading. And I thought about for a long time what I should do the reading on. And finally I decided, well, you know what? I'm just going to let my guides decide what to do the reading on. I kind of, when I was doing the cards, when I was trying to connect, I asked about all the things that I just mentioned about the general craziness, about the election, about the coronavirus, about the stock market, about people's travel plans and family plans and school and all those things. But then always, as I do, I said, what do we need to know? What would be good for us to know? And what will it help us to know? And so I shuffled and I've already laid out the cards and I've got 5 cards. So that's not a lot, but I wanted this to be a short little video and see what we can get out of it. So I'm going to tip, because I'm actually just doing this on my computer. There's no fancy schmancy setup or anything. I'm just going to tip the computer down so you can get a look at the cards, and then I may tip it back up so you can see me again as I go through them, and hopefully you can just get an idea and we'll talk a little bit more. So as you can see, this is actually kind of a circular pattern. When I saw it in my head, it looked circular to me. And we've got this center card that instead of thinking of it as a row, I want to think of this as the center. And as you can see, the center card is a major arcana card. And then we've got this, what feels kind of like an ominous card, this death card at the top, but we'll talk about that. And then here we've got the Queen of Cups, the Ace of Swords, and the Queen of Pentacles. So I feel like right away we should start with this death card, obviously. I mean, it's the one that is going to be, it just sticks out so much. You see the death card and you're going to be a little bit frightened. But this is a couple of things, because clearly the virus that's affecting the world right now, that is on its way to becoming a pandemic, has death attached with it. And as my sister Kim has mentioned in some of her videos, there is this feeling of, at this time, people sort of leaving en masse, groups of people leaving in different areas of the world and for different reasons. And also you'll see a lot of people that you thought, oh, this person is important to the world or important to me personally, whether it's a celebrity or an author or a government figure. But I'm talking about people that have some sort of prominence in the world. There's going to be a lot of them leaving too. And it's a feeling of having done a lot and then sort of leaving it in our hands, the rest of our hands. But this death card has a couple of meanings, because it is talking about people that will pass away because of this virus, and they will. And they'll also pass away because of incompetence related to the virus. There's a feeling also of people passing because they can't get to help. This may be rural areas, this may be depressed areas of the world, this may be in certain kinds of places. Like a place that would spring to mind, someplace like a prison where there's just nobody's equipped to handle it. So there's going to be pockets of that. I mean, what I'm seeing mostly when I'm talking about that, though, is these rural areas, very rural areas of the world, like China. And places like that, where people sort of don't have a lot of knowledge about what's going on and certainly can't get to the kind of modern medical help that would really help them. So that's going to happen. So that's not to be alarmist. I mean, I think we all realize that now. It's for so many people, this is not a death sentence, but for many people, it is an awakening of what can happen in this sort of scenario. And this is this is an awakening, especially of political leaders, world leaders, health leaders, but also individuals, just, you know, on an individual level. And so that is the deeper meaning of this death card. This is the death of like an old way of not only doing things, but thinking about things. Because we're going to find, and we're finding already, that borders have no meaning when it comes to this. And as far as keeping it out, but also borders have no meaning as far as help. You know, when it comes down to it, there are going to be places and people accepting help from people and places they previously thought of as enemies, or as sort of like lacking in some way, like they're not like us. But what we're finding out here is that we're all the same. We're all like us. And this is, so in that respect, this death card is talking about the death of these ideas, these old ways of doing things. I mean, here in the United States, we've been very resistant, or certain elements of the population, the government have been very resistant to the idea of globalization. And so there's this idea now of right now, at the beginning of this, there's an idea that still people that, oh, we've globalized too much, we rely on the world too much, we should be isolated. And they're going to come to find that nothing could be further from the truth. What we need to understand is that we're all in this together. It's one planet, one humanity. And this is, I mean, honestly, this is part of this shift, this realization of our own humanity. Now, here in this country, this does have to do with and plays into the election that we are coming into right now, that right at the moment feels very acrimonious to some people. If you've ever lived through an election before, you know that this is just sort of how they go, although there is a whole new dynamic with sort of the coarse level of discourse in some cases. But because this is happening at this time, this is very much planned. And I'm not saying, I don't want to insinuate that it's being planned by the non-physical world and we're just sort of like being subject to it. We're part of that planning. You know, we do this too. We work, whether we consciously know it or not, with those in the non-physical world to bring about these things that need to happen, and or that we just influence in happening, you know, for better or worse. In this case, it's a real shaking up. You know, that's why it comes as a death card, because this is a shaking up. This is a pay attention. This is, things need to change. So many people, millions and millions of people, want and need and are determined to have these changes. You know, it's a feeling of having enough for this dynamic, this power dynamic, to change. And this has to do not only with economic things, but also gender, racial, sexual orientation, just different things that we have decided make us different, you know, and as a society. And so these things are being broken down because we want them to break down. And also it's about time. Like, we have been working on this for, you know, eons. And it's that thing where there have been brighter times. This is sort of prehistory. You know, you hear people talk about, maybe you've read about like Atlantis and places like that. That's sort of, those are sort of different, in that there were greater heights achieved, but again, it broke down. But for us, for people of the earth, since like the Stone Age, this iteration of life on Earth has been slow. The progress has been slow, and it's us getting a little bit frustrated, and people in the in the non-physical world sort of saying, let's help you move this forward. So we're all working in concert to move this forward. Now, what happens when we move it forward? Well, the basic thing is that we have greater contact and greater back and forth with the non-physical world. And for that reason, we're able to accomplish so many more things. We're able to see growth and expansion. And that's what life calls on us to do in all forms, on this plane and in the non-physical world. It calls on us to expand and to grow. And we have been, there's growth always, but sometimes it's not in the most positive vein. And so what we're seeing is this idea, this attempt to get us to grow positively and in a way that benefits us as souls, as entities, and the all that is, however you want to think of that. If you label that God or the universe, this positive and loving expansion is what we are aiming for and what this is bringing about. So this truly is the death of an old system and an old way of doing things, an old form of cooperation and communication, and the birth of a new one. And that's what this death card is always about, these rebirths. That having been said, I don't want anyone to think that this is, there's this thing that's happening that's like Armageddon, or let's see how else I'm trying to think, like the second coming or something like that. It's not that clear cut or clean cut, and it's not that imminent, and it doesn't really take that form. I mean, it is this rebirth, but it's not that idea of this magic moment where everything changes. And it's certainly not an idea of this is, right now we're March 2020 and it's all going to be good by, January 2021. This is a process, and we're very much not only a part of that process, but we are, the process is dependent upon us, right? We can slow and we can move. That's why some of this stuff is happening, this shaking up of all of us with the virus, with the stock market, with fears. There's going to be other things coming up that not like sickness, but things that happen within governments, breakdowns and changes in governments, even some sort of warlike activity. I'm not talking like a world war. I'm talking about pockets of places where there are new hostilities, and they work really to start breaking this down. But this is a process. At best, I keep thinking 30 or 40 years. For us personally, it can be much shorter. And so many people are working to build that connection. I feel like if you're, studying tarot or anything, there's a lot of wonderful psychics I know out there and you're working toward that, if that's what you're doing, and they're working toward that. And we're trying to use these tools to help other people begin to connect so that it's sort of hastened, right? And if nothing else, even if it continues to be a slow process, we can have these personal awakenings. We can have this personal death of the old way of thinking and this rebirth into like a calmer, better, more knowing, more understanding place. So that's why this card, this major arcana card, this death card, is at the top of this reading. And right below it in the center, however, and I'm going to put this down again, So in the center, you've got this moon card, and that's so telling because the moon card, first of all, it's about our dual nature as human beings. So while you may be getting this and while you might be making your personal shift, you have to know that many people are not ready and will not be ready in this lifetime. But eventually, there will be more people who have taken part in the shift than not, many more, almost always. I mean, eventually it will be pretty much everybody, but that's a ways off. But so you are going to have this dichotomy, and it's going to feel even more and more stark, the differences. You're going to notice that even more because it's just becomes so apparent when you sort of made that shift and somebody else hasn't, and you can feel like they're so stuck in the physical world, and it can make you angry, but it can also just make you feel sort of sad for them, a little bit frustrated, because you can really only help yourself and be an example to others. So help others, try and help others as you can, of course, but it ultimately it's up to the individual to make that shift within themselves, to accept it, right? So this is about the dual nature, but of course in this card you also get very much that idea of intuition. That's this lobster crawling out of the water onto land from this water that represents our subconscious, our spiritual selves, our soul selves, and crawling out into land. Now this is the moon card, right? It's not the sun card yet. So that again speaks to the time we're in, where it's the beginning of this. And so many of us are climbing out of this this world of false belief, or not, or fear, or just beliefs that aren't quite as joyful as they should be, because our lives are meant to be joyful. Our growth is meant to be a joyful experience. And so we're just crawling out of that. And this may have to do with the way we grew up. It may have to do with our religious traditions or our lack of religious traditions. It may have to do with, so many things. The world that we're growing up in, it's sort of that, it's funny because if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom is just like the very bottom of this pyramid that leads us to the top, to self-actualization. The bottom is just like living, just like being able to eat, being able to have shelter, being able to be healthy. So when you're trapped in that, sometimes it's hard to feel connected, and yet that is a time when we should strive the most to be connected, because it puts everything in perspective. And it does remind you of your own personal power. So this kind of awakening is difficult for many. And it's like incumbent upon those of us who are going through it or working toward it, to, if nothing else, let our vibration be as high as possible, because it does ripple through other people. Because we are all connected, right? So if we can just be calm, if we can be even joyous, and be joyous with the life we're given, and living in this really kind of exciting time, even though at times like right now it can be a little frightening. It really is a joyous and wonderful and opportunity, but also one that's sort of entrusted to us. So this moon card, that's why it's the center, because this is what it's all about. It's about our awakening. It's about bringing the spiritual into the world. It's about bringing the non-physical into the physical, in closer connection with the physical. And it's about doing this on the individual level. So we see all this sort of craziness happening around us, but the point of our personal power, and there's many great spiritual leaders who speak about this and to this, the point of our personal power is ourselves and the now, right? If you just look around your room where you are right now and realize you are here right now, and this is where your power lies. And maybe that feels powerless, but it may be that your power is in simply having no fear, of realizing, understanding that this is a part of becoming. And so it is a necessary and ultimately a very good thing. But you are safe. You're always safe because your soul is safe. There's nothing to fear because your soul is always safe. That, you know, we're willingly experiencing these worldly things, and we cannot be diminished or destroyed. And so ultimately we're always safe. And that's, this moon card is calling on us to remember that. Okay, so I'm going to move kind of clockwise now, because we've got, put it out again, this Ace of Swords. I'll just even hold it up. And this is very much about what I'm hearing is like the wheat and the chaff. This is like cutting through things. This is dividing things. This is making us understand things. And this is making us understand things about ourselves, our governments, our systems, our institutions. And you can see, and some of them will just break down. People will make changes and choices. And this is about cutting out things that are unnecessary and harmful, and that sort of stand in the way, like a sword in front of you would stand in the way. And this is, again, this comes as an ace card because it's a gift card, right? It's about us. You know, when we think of our intellect, we sometimes break that apart from the spiritual, but it's not true. Our intellect is very much tied up in the spiritual. And so as we especially awaken, especially those of us who are beginning to awaken, and it's just the planet who begins to awaken, our intellect is very much a part of that. It's us saying, okay, I'm going to not live by fear, but I'm going to be safe, right? I'm going to wash my hands, or I'm not going to go to this place that just doesn't feel safe to me. And that's another thing about this moon card, is you can have that, you know, that intuition. You can call on that more and have more faith in it about, I'm just not going to do this, or I am going to do it. Or, you know, they said not to travel, but oh my gosh, airfare to Europe right now is really good. Well, you feel good about that? Or do you feel not good about that? That is your own intuition, and it's going to be different for every person, what you do and don't do. But this Ace of Swords is very much about the intellect. And so it's talking about the ways in which we intellectually decide to force and bring about and believe in change. And as I said, this has to do with systems. This has to do very much in the United States with the way that we distribute medical care, the kinds of ways that we develop, fund, and distribute medicine itself. And a lot of things, it helps us to understand that a lot of the ideas that we've had about ourselves and our country and our individual countries, if you're not in the United States, were actually kept us bound, right? And this Ace of Swords is allowing us to cut through that. And that's a lot what this time is about too. I will say too that one thing I thought, and we'll talk about this with the Queen of Pentacles, let's kind of shift there, because we do get, I'm just going to hold it up now, this Queen of Pentacles card that's on the bottom of this circle. And this is about our relationship with money. This is, I asked specifically when I was asking about this reading about the stock market, because it's just been such a nightmare for so many people. And this is talking about our relationship with money. And it's so interesting to me that it comes across as the Queen card, because it's talking about the ways in which money should be a blessing to us. You know how the money is the root of all evil? Well, it's the root of all evil only because it's the relationship that we have with it. Now, this started to happen. This has actually happened again and again and again in the history of the United States and the world, where there are these huge economic losses. And a lot of the population reforms their identity around money. Now, like in the Great Depression, 1929 Depression, a lot of that happened where people lost everything. Some people couldn't cope with it and just chose not to even participate in the physical world anymore. And then many people grew fearful because of that, but many other people came to understand that the greatest joys in life couldn't be laid at the foot of money. Right? They came in other forms, that money was indeed a tool and could be a huge blessing. That's why it comes as the Queen of Pentacles. Depending on how we use it, it can be such a kind and joyful thing to know that everybody has enough and everybody is taken care of. The idea that's being cast away is that some people aren't valuable because they don't have money, they don't work for money, they don't. I mean, in this country, it would be sort of they don't pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and really nothing could be further from the truth. We all have inherent and equal value as souls, as eternal beings, as a divine part of the all that is of God, right? So our relationship with money is shifting during this process as well. Again, this is a really hard one to get past because it does, so often, we have, as human beings, issues with self-esteem and so forth. And that is one thing that helps us feel better about ourselves, is thinking that we have sort of more than. And so it's a hard shift to have happen. And so it's been done incrementally. We've done this incrementally over a very long period of time. And it's trying to break down our relationship with more is better, and to bring us to this Queen of Pentacles place. And as you can see, as I say in my videos, as you can see, hopefully, she's such a sweet and benevolent figure, a kind figure. This isn't a lording my money over you kind of figure. This is a look what I can do with these wonderful earthly gifts, including wealth in whatever form that is. And basically what she's saying is, I can give, I can enjoy the beauty, I can help others enjoy beauty, we can be fruitful and plentiful and kind and good. And this is what it's talking about. And this is what's attempting again to have happen. And you can see that, like in the US and around the world, really. We just had a financial crisis in 2008, and we learned a lot. A lot of people did. I did personally. But it's happening again quickly because, again, this shift, it feels like the other side is saying, we're going to help you move this forward. And we're saying, whether consciously or unconsciously, we are saying as a species, yes, please help us. We need to move this forward. And that's why you are here and I am here at this time, because we consciously knew this was a time that we wanted to be in to help move this work forward. And so finally, you get the Queen of Cups. Oh, the Queen of Cups. Don't you love her? And again, I think it comes across as the Queen because it's talking about the planet, this Earth Mother energy. And cups, as you know, are all about love and feeling, support and caring. Wonderful things that come down to the most elemental part of the universe, which is love. Everything is built on love. And there's such a feeling of, from the other side, trying to let this feeling, this more love, flow to the physical world, because we keep doing this thing where we push it forward and then it pulls back, and it's sort of there is an element of opportunism here, where certain personalities come into the world, and instead of furthering this cause of love. They see it as an opportunity to gain personally. And of course that means nothing. And when they cross over to the other side, they'll they'll realize that, and they'll have to deal with that. And it's not, I'm not saying as a punishment, but they will understand the consequences of their actions. And that can be hard when we understand the consequences of our actions. But so there is that element. But as this grows, as we have this feeling of, we don't want anyone to suffer. And when you have a pandemic and you can see that everyone is suffering, and again, even though we've got the death card, I'm not saying this is a like massive worldwide sort of die off. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? But I mean, it's not to that extent. Yes, some people will leave. We talked about that. Some people will cross over. Some people will die. However, this is more about suffering and about not wanting people to get sick, about communal response. Like, I'm going to be responsible, and if I'm sick, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to not touch things if I don't have to. I'm going to basically take care of myself, because that helps take care of others. Because that's what we want. None of us want somebody who's sick coming to work or going to work, or serving us at a restaurant, or coming to church or something if they are sick. And people through this process are realizing that. So it's not just about death as physical death. It's about the death of a lot of ideas. This is a process, as I said, of rebirth. And this Queen of Cups is talking about the ways in which we need to and are coming to, and through this will even more so and more quickly grow, to love our fellow human beings, to be concerned about their welfare as well as our own. And because we want that, we ask that, if we need help physically to go to the hospital, or to be able to, in this country, afford to go to the hospital, we suddenly understand how important it is for us as human beings to support each other in that endeavor, and in that way of living, right? So where we care about each other. And this Queen of Cups, when we're talking about Mother Earth, this Queen of Cups is saying, this is how we need to be. This is what we need to become. This is part of what we're learning through this process. Now, the way that this relates to government, I think, in all governments, but I did ask about the election that we're going through, there is this feeling of understanding, coming more to understand, especially in the United States, where individualism and rugged individualism are so valued, coming to understand that there is an importance and an eternal philosophy, I guess is the word I want, that aligns closer with, we are all one. We need to look out for each other. It's a joy and a privilege to look out for each other, and we all grow together, right? We don't have to think of the world as a hilltop that we're trying to get to the top of, and so we push everybody else down, in the process. Like there's only one top. It's a plane, and there's room for everybody on this plane, and not only room for everybody, and not only is everybody welcome, but it's appropriate that it should be this way, because this is the way it is eternally, right? We of course we all work on different things, but we are all connected. We're all part of the divine, and we are all of equal worth. And for some reason on in the physical plane, that's been a tough lesson for us to learn. And it does have a lot to do with ego, of course, but that is part of what we're learning. So, to reiterate, yes, we get this sort of scary card at the top that's the death card, but it is mostly about this change, this death of old ideas and old ideas and systems and governments and institutions and ideas that keep us from growing as a species and as souls. And it's this rebirth. And the center card, we need to rely on our own intuition, build our own faith, understand that we are not alone. There are many people who are, I mean, we're all going through this, but there are many people who are working toward building this stronger love foundation. There will always be people who sort of try and take advantage of that, but we don't have to be a part of that. We don't have to allow them to rule over us. We are very much our own agents, and we need to live our lives true to ourselves, our souls, and that center concept of love. So a lot of these things we talked about, you know, things are changing and shifting, but it's nothing to fear, because not only are we actively involved in this, and not only do we have this own personal power to not only get through this, but expand and grow through it. So it's not only that, but we have nothing to fear, because the universe, the eternal universe, is based in love and growth and unity and caring for each other. So that's the eternal. That's what we all are, and that's the ultimate answer to everything. So we have nothing to fear. And we certainly don't have to fear being lost or diminished forever, right? But it will behoove us to grow as much as possible, to look to our own intuition, to meditate, to reach out to others to help, to not live in fear, but instead live in love. So I hope that's helpful. This is much longer than I wanted it to be. I thought I can do this in a few minutes, but that didn't quite work out. But I feel better just having done this reading. I hope you do too. I know this isn't specific. Oh, this is what's going to happen. This is going to happen, but that's kind of not how it works. And because everyone has their own free will. You know, that's why we're our own point of personal power, obviously. But because everyone has their own free will, things are very much in flux all the time. So don't live in fear, live in love, and we're all okay. We're going to be okay. So I hope this is helpful. Tune in for other videos, and hopefully we can keep this level of hope and love alive. It's there. It runs through everything. So we most definitely will. So until next time, take care of yourself, look out for each other. And I'm Chris, and your clairvoyant, and bye for now.